Hi, everybody. My name is Billy Townsend. I'm a former school board member in Polk County, Florida. And this is my Endtime Academies presentation. We're going to take a look at the reality of Florida's private voucher school provider network. Um, my goal in this is to change your mental image of what these schools are. And we're going to start that right now. What does private mean really in the real world and in a voucher sense? Um, it does not mean the fancy prep school you've heard about in New England. It does not mean Tampa Jesuit. It does not mean uh, Lakeland Christian. More often than not, it means in time Christian school of excellence or something like that. And you can see from this picture, this is a storefront in Lake Wales. The school is attached to a daycare. We're going to come back to it, but this is what schools typically look like in the Florida voucher provider network. They don't look like the schools you have in your head, and we're going to show you that. And I think a really good way to visualize this, to visualize some of the segregation that goes on in these schools, is to think about Brown versus Board of Education. I was lucky enough to drop into the National Monument out there about a year and a half ago, and the school on your left is the school that the Brown family was attempting to escape in Topeka, Kansas. They wanted to attend. They wanted their daughter to attend a school similar to this one, but that was closer to them. Look at the size of that school, the institutional care put into it, and even so, that was the school that embodied segregation for the country. Now, take a look at Preparing the Way Academy in Lakeland, where I live. This is what this has evolved into. The poster on the left of the Preparing the Way Academy picture is soliciting for all 5 of Florida's voucher programs. This is a school that is trying to get voucher money. And I think when you compare the obvious lack of capital in that school to what you see in Brown versus Board of in the Brown versus Board of Education school, it's really quite striking to see the direction we've gone in as a country when it comes to a commitment to equity of resources, to equity of care. I think this is especially important given what Ron DeSantis said in February 2019 in advocating for vouchers. Quote, "To me, if the taxpayer is paying for education, it's public education. It doesn't matter if you're going to the district managed school that you're zoned for. It doesn't matter if you're going to a public magnet, a public charter, if you take a tax credit scholarship and go to a private school, or if you use an ESA for homeschool. To me, that is all the public's commitment to make sure that our kids have the best education." Um, so Ron DeSantis is saying that Preparing the Way Academy is a public school. But of course, they are not scrutinized. Those types of schools are not scrutinized at all or overseen at all in the way public schools are. They don't have to take any of the tests that at public schools have to take. And I think we should all take the governor at his word and begin to scrutinize these schools because many of them are dangerous. And there are a lot of them. This is a map. This is from Step Up for Students, which is the group that oversees and hands out the money to these schools. I just did a search for Polk County. That's my county, and these are the locations of these schools that show up when you do the search. These are all schools that take vouchers in one form or another. And what you see here is it's a completely parallel system to the regular public school system, to the real public school system. And as I'll explain, these schools are not like charter schools. They're not like magnet schools. They're not competing separately, really. What they're doing is sort of sucking off of the regular public school system. It's a parasitic relate relate relationship, because kids do not stay in these schools, as we're going to show. Um, the kids that are in these schools go back and forth to the regular, real public system all the time. There's tremendous turnover, so it's much more sort of a parasitic relationship. And this has been going on for years. I mean, this is all hiding in plain sight. Of these data points you see here, maybe 10 or 12 are schools that are reputable, I would say. And again, we're going to get into that. First, let's recap what Florida's 5 major voucher programs are. They are divided into 2 basic types. There's the general education type, and then the special needs type. The Florida legislature, as of this recording, is pursuing ways to sort of throw all this money together into one giant pot for educational savings accounts, or collapsing some of the special needs vouchers into others. It's not sure how that's going to come out, but as of right now, let's take a look at the general education vouchers on the left. The Florida tax credit voucher is the most famous and established. It's typically what you think of when you think of a voucher. Corporations make donations and get a dollar for dollar write off from their taxes. So tax money that would go to fund government or public service is going to fund schools like Preparing the Way Academy instead. That is by far the largest voucher program on the general education side. The Hope Scholarship, which is also known as the Bully Scholarship, is funded by voluntary sales tax contributions. Very few people take this up. As a school board member, I even suggesting or even letting someone know this existed tended to cause the person it was being suggested to become angry. When kids are bullied, they generally don't want to leave their friends or their school behind. They want the bullying to stop. So the Hope/Bully Scholarship, which was a gimmick from the beginning, has really been a non-fat actor. And then there's the Florida Empowerment Scholarship, which is new. That's what was created last session, and it is taken directly from money that would have gone to the public schools. It's taken directly from the public school allocation. And it's direct tax money. It's designed to help children who aren't, or it's designed to fund children who aren't just poor, like the Florida tax credit is. It extends eligibility up through a really into the middle class. Now, on the right hand side, you see the special needs ESE education vouchers, McKay and Gardner, both of which have been around for a long time. McKay is really targeted to learning disabilities. It's generally the less severe disability of the two. It's also kind of woven into the public system as well. McKay is a perfectly decent program, I would say. You can always reform and make things better, but I never had any problem with McKay as a board member. Gardner started out as providing education services for kids who have really severe disabilities, kids with Down syndrome or cerebral palsy, or something that really affects their ability to get through the day. Over time, it is morphed into a kind of general. It kind of it's really a free for all in which the most severely disabled kids often aren't able to get really good services because there aren't a lot of services to buy, and the parents end up buying a bunch of stuff that's available in a marketplace. Gardner, as of right now, I believe it's the Florida House has passed a bill to get rid of Gardner entirely and collapse it into another big amount of money. It's a little confusing how this is going to come out, but these are the 5 current voucher programs, and I think the legislature's goal, or certainly Jeb Bush's foundation's goal, is to collapse all of these 5 into one giant pot of money, and then just let people go buy stuff. But as I've said a lot, there's nothing to buy in the voucher marketplace, or at least very, very little. I've equated this a lot to abandoning a supermarket and going to shop for your groceries at a dollar store. That's very much what the focus, the intent to switch from real public schools to these voucher funded grifter schools is. So let's move to the next slide. This is the FTC program, which is the tax credit voucher for low income kids, and this is, I think, one of the most important stats that is unknown in the country or in Florida as a whole. Kids abandon this scholarship faster than they can get it. It's a 35% 1 year dropout rate, a 61% 2-year dropout rate, and a 75% 3-year dropout rate. This image comes right from a study from the Urban Institute. And what's interesting is that voucher advocates touted this study when it came out, because it says if you don't drop out, if you stay in the program for, I believe it's 4 years or more, kids attend college at a slightly higher rate than kids who are in the general public school system. But if you think about it as if this was a vaccine, this is a vaccine that kills 70 to 75% of the kids that get it. So you wouldn't say, hey, the kids who it didn't kill got slightly better. That's a ridiculous way to think about the effectiveness of a program. This is a program that 75% of its participants reject within 3 years. That's a terrible program. That's a terrible performance. If there was anything like this in a public school setting, there would be rage, and the powers that be would be tearing their hair out. But the powers that be are very supportive of this program for reasons that sort of escape me. This also likely contributes to another very important fact, that it's impossible to get either education experts or journalists to acknowledge, and that is that Florida has the worst learning rate as determined by test scores in the country. There's a thing called the Educational Opportunity Project at Stanford University, and they took state level tests from every state and measured how kids grew by those test scores. Now, let me be clear. I despise the entire test and punish model. I would abolish it. I'm going to be talking about that in a second. But Florida chases test scores harder than any state in the country, and its performance on test scores over time is the worst. That tells you something about test-based education. And I think there are three reasons for that. One, probably the most important reason is that chasing test scores kills test scores. It saps children's interest in learning over time. Two, um, Florida does mass third grade retention, which allows for gamed third grade tests because a lot of third graders are taking the test again. It means we peak in third grade at 9. We have artificially high test scores for 9-year-olds, and between that time and middle school, those scores collapse. And that has been the pattern both on Florida state level tests and on the NAEP for a generation. And it's sitting there in plain sight. No one will address it because that would do a lot to discredit the Jeb Bush model of education. And the third part, and this is where it relates to vouchers, is many kids go to their voucher school to escape third grade retention and to escape Florida's testing programs. When you go to a voucher school, you're essentially opting out of testing. Then those kids, because of the high dropout rate, come back in to the public schools. They are quote unquote behind on their tests, and then their test scores are weaponized against the public schools. Again, it's a crazy cycle, but that the number of kids who are in this high dropout rate voucher program almost certainly contributes to Florida's terrible learning rate. And again, this is a fact that the entire education industrial complex won't even explore. Like, they won't even note, what does this mean? Why? And I think that shows how corrupt, I think the whole policy structure of education is in this country. Now, this is, the testing and retention issue that I just mentioned was cited really well by the Orlando Sentinel, which did an investigation of Florida tax credit schools, and they called their package "Schools Without Rules." This was a couple of years ago, and really important quote here from that reporting, which should have won a Pulitzer Prize. But quote, "Escaping high stakes testing is such a scholarship selling point that one private school administrator refers to students as, quote, testing refugees." I think it's important to understand, if you're escaping a school's test policies, there is no such thing as choice. You don't have choice unless you have the right to opt out of the testing and the high stakes consequences in public schools. You can't say that you operate in choice. You don't have the right to attend a public school that doesn't drown you in tests. So I think it's important to note how much choice is really a lie in Florida. So about the time that, or not long after the Schools Without Rules report came out, I became aware of a couple of issues in Polk County voucher schools that are very close to one another in the Auburndale Winter Haven area. The one on the left is called Kingdom Prep, and there was a guy named Pastor Tiger. That's what he went by, Pastor Tiger, who was arrested for grooming and sexually abusing children at that school. That was a couple of years ago, and this is really when the voucher provider network came to my attention. I began to look closely at it. That made some news at the time, and in the process of discovering that and looking through that, I also came across a school called Akeland's Angels in Winter Haven, and some reporting on that showed that in Akeland's Angels Learning Center, a daycare, which is owned by the same people, had been shut down by the state a few years before. But the voucher school that Lakeland's Angels operates is still going strong, still on the Step Up for Students website. And it just shows you the enormous quality gap. Florida's pre-K and daycare have some oversight built into them at the state level, which makes sense. The voucher programs don't, and I think it's extremely telling that the state would shut down a daycare run by the same people that it's trying to sell vouchers to for K-12. And it just goes to show you how broken this program is. And these two schools are just 3.2 miles apart in the Winter Haven, Auburndale area of Polk County. And I think this is a good segue into what these schools look like again. On the right is the Lakeland's Angels Christian Academy in Winter Haven. It has 201 students. Almost all of them are Black. And I think it's interesting to compare this to Academy Prep in Lakeland, which is probably the only voucher school that truly does what voucher schools are supposed to do. Academy Prep is a sort of it's trying to replicate the experience of an elite private school. The picture on your left is only one corner of it. The entire campus is beautiful. It's funded by the Jenkins Foundation, which provides about $10,000 per kid on top of the Florida vouchers, which gives you an idea of what it takes money-wise to actually produce a significant experience. But I think the most telling disparity here is look at the number of kids in these schools. Lakeland's Angels has 201 kids. This is a school whose daycare had been shut down because it was deemed not safe or not effective, etc. Academy Prep, with all that money, with all that intent, with all this campus, serves 76 kids. There are 3 times as many kids in Lakeland's Angels, and they're almost all Black. I think this gives you an idea of what vouchers with capital look like, what private schools with capital look like, versus private schools with no capital. And one of the real distinctions that you have to look for is any private school, any voucher school that's funded entirely by the vouchers that would not exist if the vouchers weren't there is a dangerous school. They exist only to collect a voucher. Academy Prep exists to try to provide a unique experience. And the fact that it has $10,000 per kid on top of the vouchers, at least, is really the story there. Now, the stuff that follows, I'm going to kind of dive into this comparison of capital and no capital and what it looks like. But the stats that I'm doing and the spreadsheets that will follow, I did all of that through the Step Up for Students marketplace. Step Up for Students is the private organization that gets a cut for every voucher it sells. The image on the right is their map. You just type in a zip code or a school name, and it'll take you to the location, and you'll see the schools in your area. And what's also funny is Step Up for Students does no oversight at all of its schools, but the moment you show up in their marketplace, they have sales bots on the left there that are trying to get you to buy. Now, when you go into the Step Up for Students marketplace and you find a school, you can find some basic information about it. And again, we're going to do the Lakeland Angels and the Academy Prep comparison. And I'm going to give you a look at what a serious school, a reputable school looks like, and what a reputable one looks like. Check out the scholarships accepted part here. I'm going to highlight this right through here. Academy Prep does not take Gardner or McKay. Those are the two disability education, the ESE scholarships. And then over here on the programs offered, they're very clear in that they do not offer special ed. So I mean that's fair. I mean, you can make a commentary as to whether they should or not, but they're being honest in how they're presenting themselves, and I respect that. They are a regular education school designed to create a specialized elite experience for kids who would otherwise not have that option. Now, come over to Lakeland's Angels. They take every single scholarship, which means they mix general ed and ESE. You see, they provide supposedly ESE services. They provide special education services. They provide regular education services. That is a massive blinking red light for any school in the charter. I'm sorry, the voucher network. The reason for that is anybody who knows anything about schools knows that trying to do inclusion, where you include ESE kids and general ed kids together at any kind of scale, is hard, and it takes a lot of support. It takes a lot of intentional investment. It takes very structured programs, and these schools just don't have the capital to do it. For the most part. And anytime you see a school that doesn't look like it has any capital, but does say it takes all the scholarships and provides all the services, that is a blinking red light to run away. And so I just wanted to kind of show you the difference. Now, this is where the Brown versus Board of Education issue comes back into play. In Polk County, because of the way these voucher schools work, there are 16 schools in Polk County, I-County, that have enrollments with more than 76% Black children. 12 of those 16 schools are 95% Black or more. 6 are 100% Black. Overall, according to the Step Up for Students marketplace, 876 Black children in Polk County attend those 16 schools. 876, that's a lot of kids. If you look up here at my little spreadsheet, note the accreditation. These are those 16 schools. Not a single one of them is accredited, not one. That means no organization has gone in to review their programs. No one has signed off on anything they do. Now come over to all the scholarships they take. Virtually all of them take FTC, McKay, and Gardner. See, you go all the way down. You go all the way down. There are a couple of exceptions. Keep in mind, the overall FTC program has a 61% two-year dropout rate. So you have 16 schools that are not accredited, that are heavily segregated, that have blinking indicators of fraud in their in how they take scholarships, and that is a level of no capital segregation, kids who are out of sight, that is really appalling. And this is these schools have existed for a long time, um, and kids have cycled in and out of them without anyone paying any attention to them, and it's a big problem. Now, similar kind of thing exists on the ESE side. Um, Notice all these are the schools with the highest concentrations of ESE students in voucher schools. You'll notice Higher Learning Advantage Academy and Lakeland holds the distinction of being the most segregated school in Polk County, in that it is 100% ESE and 100% Black. You will see there is no accreditation for it of any kind for the ESE kids or the low income kids, or both. You will also see every single one of these schools, every single one of these high ESE schools also take FTC. So they're trying to bring in money from low income kids for programs for low income general ed kids for programs that are 100% ESE. Again, that's just a blinking red light indicator. And there should be somebody overseeing these. Again, you'll see, look at the lack of accreditation. These are kids with specialized problems who need help. And you know, no one has verified what's going on in those schools. This is the front door of what you see on the right of Higher Learning Advantage Academy, which supposedly has 8 kids who are all ESE, all Black. No one knows what's going on behind that door. The only playground equipment in that school is a basketball goal buried deep in its parking lot. It's really, our most vulnerable kids are locked away behind a door like this, and we don't know what's being done to them or for them. Now, this is probably what you think of when you think of private school. The picture on the right-hand side is Lakeland Christian in Lakeland. It has enormous resources. It also takes some voucher kids. The last figure I saw was 10% roughly. And I think there are probably 10 to 11 schools in Polk County that look something like this, that have some inkling of what you would think of if you were thinking of a private school. And I think it's very interesting to go look at the schools with the smallest Black populations in Polk County, and then look at their accreditation. You see St. Paul Lutheran, check, accredited. Resurrection Catholic, accredited. St. Anthony Catholic, accredited. All Saints Academy, which is a school for some of Polk County's most elite families, accredited. Santa Fe Catholic, accredited. Lakeland Christian, accredited. The accredited schools, which are the only ones that you don't take a massive risk in attending, are very low minority populations as a whole, particularly Black populations, very high white, and they don't take a lot of voucher kids, because voucher kids don't pay the full cost of what it costs to attend those schools. And there's a Catholic school in Lakeland called St. Joseph's that got overly dependent on vouchers, and it overwhelmed the inability of those kids to pay the full cost of running a reputable school on vouchers, killed St. Joe's. And St. Joe's had been serving Lakeland kids a private Catholic education for like 60 or 70 years. It was an old school, and now it's gone. And vouchers killed it, because you can't run a serious school. You can't have a serious provider on a voucher on voucher funding. And that leads into a few simple reforms that would make the voucher programs a lot better. And I think you start with accreditation. Whoever is accrediting All Saints and Lakeland Christian, and I don't know who that is, should be accrediting every one of these schools. And accreditation should be a requirement to operate. Secondly, and I suspect this would be part of any accreditation, we should require a meaningful capital or endowment to operations threshold, meaning that it costs a lot of money to run a reputable school. You need to have money on hand that allows that school to keep being available, to keep functioning. That is far beyond what the voucher programs themselves provide. Additionally, voucher schools should be very much like pre-Ks and daycares are. Voucher schools should be subject to that kind of qualitative oversight. If you're getting public money, if you're a public school, as Ron DeSantis says, you need some oversight. And I think the Early Learning Coalition offers a good model for that. And then, of course, if you want to have choice, if you want to truly have choice, and you want to truly have fairness, require that voucher schools take every test public school kids take. True public school kids take. If we want to get rid of all tests tomorrow, I'm good with it. But there should be equality of testing. You shouldn't have a system built around tests whose sole purpose is to sell another system. I mean, I think what's clear, the more you look at this, is that the only purpose of standardized testing in Florida, in third grade retention in Florida, is to game the results of third and fourth grade tests and to sell vouchers. That's the entire point of Florida's entire standardized testing platform. We should be rid of it entirely, and we should build around qualitative, high capital approaches. And I think, I think the people who are behind ESAs, who are behind the expansion of vouchers, are making a really terrible strategic mistake. I think they're going to eventually bring down the entire anti-public school movement, because there is nothing to buy in your voucher marketplace. When they give you a debit card, an ESA debit card, to go buy education services, there's nothing to buy. There are a few spots at Lakeland Christian. There are a few spots at Resurrection Catholic. There are a few spots at All Saints, and maybe some spots at Victory. But overall, there are very, very few spots, and everything else is garbage. And you can't hide from that. Dropping $1 billion a year on these FTC schools has not produced any private capacity to provide education. It's produced Higher Learning Academy and Endtime's Academy. And I think the more that is scrutinized, the more it's going to force a real reckoning with the 61% dropout rate voucher program that is hideously segregated, and is a giant social problem. As I'm fond of saying, vouchers need a grand jury, not an expansion. This little note here is from a parent who shared a story with me about her child being dumped by text from one of the more reputable ESE voucher schools. and she was asking about oversight, and I said there is none. And she said they don't have a department to do investigations. It's just they, meaning the state. And I was like, nope. And she's, wow. And I think that does summarize it. People don't realize how bad these schools are, how dangerous they are, and how utterly devoid of any oversight they are. And this is the image I want you to take with you again. It kind of gets back to the Brown versus Board of Education image. The voucher school, public school system, you know, if that's what Ron DeSantis considers it, is every bit as segregated by race and capital as pre-Brown versus Board of Education, as Jim Crow education was in Florida. It is the differential between Lakeland Christian and Preparing the Way Academy is so vast as to not even be quantifiable. Take that image with you. I have coined the Florida model of education. I've coined a term for it called Jeb Crow, because this is Jeb Bush's vision. Jeb Bush's vision was for a handful of kids to go to Lakeland Christian, and for schools like this on the left to thrive. That's what vouchers are. That's the kind of society we're building, and that Florida has already built. I am eager to change that. I could live with a small voucher program that was based around capital and based around schools that are serious and not scams, that wasn't segregated. And if we actually had a school, if we actually had a voucher system like that, it would probably have 11 or 12 schools in it in Polk County, instead of the 80 or more that you can find. So thank you for working with me on this. I appreciate the attention. Anyone who wants this PowerPoint, I'm happy to share it with, and just spread the word and share this video. Thanks very much.